Good evening, all. Hello. Thank you very much for braving the jet stream and coming on in tonight. This is the usual Planning Commission meeting night, and we have chosen to devote it to a discussion, presentation, good information about our proposed 2030 land use plan. I want to suggest to you that we have a combination of people. The Planning Commission obviously is not sitting up here, but we have planning commissioners amongst us. There we go. Thank you. Chris, Charlie, George. There we go. Mr. Lemieux. Thank you. And we also have, we are indebted for staff being with us. And we have members of our working groups whom you will hear from later. Want to raise your hands? You know who working groups are, huh? That did all the work? Oh, Brian, working group, Diane, working group, there we go. And we also have some partners that have worked with us along the way who are interested in what we're doing. So let's get into the business at hand. First of all, I want to share with you that this process began, I think, 9 months ago, the actual work process. And there's some things that are very, very different about the putting together of this plan. One is the process. And the process was that we would use working groups to do the work. Actually, when it came around to making this formal, we suggested that we could do this ourselves. Most jurisdictions, as you may know, hire people to help them, and there's nothing the matter with that. Isn't that right, Mike? There's nothing the matter with that. But we know that our comp plan, which was developed in the early 80s, was badly in need of looking forward. And so we decided to do it ourselves, and that's what's happened. And so a combination of 40 people or so who have worked with us on this. We created a different, if you will, shape to it so that the chapters are subject specific. We also, rather than talking about goals and things like that, we talked about policies. And so within the document are very specific county policies that we will work toward, so that by 2030, if we get all the implementation done, this is how we'll be successful. So what's the drill tonight? The drill is such that Mike will lead us in a conversation, and the conversation consists of first that he will give an overview of the comp plan with some highlights that should be of interest to you. And then Mike will have a conversation with some of the working group members to get their comments and take on what this was like and what they came up with. And with that, I think we'll cover a whole lot, and then we'll have an informal session later that Mike will let you know about. But beyond anything, this is a draft land use document. And the importance of it is that because it's draft, there's opportunity for input. And for those people who are not with us physically and are at home, please know if you go to the Frederick County website, and Mike will help us with that later, that's the place where you'll find the comprehensive plan up on the site, and that's the place where you may make comments. So without further ado, Mike. Ruddy. Did I say Ruddy?
Thank you, June, and thank you all for coming out here this evening. Thanks also for all of your participation over recent months. We're going to do this just a little bit differently here this evening. As you notice, June and I are kind of talking from the microphone because we have the benefit of the TV cameras with us here this evening to record what is going off and certainly all of the input that we'll get. So bear with me as I go through this, and also as we have a little bit of a discussion later in the program. I'll be using the microphone there and hopefully getting your comments and points of view all captured for the record here this evening. So as we move forward, again, I want to reiterate what June had said, and that is thank you very, very much to all of the working group members who participated, brought their expertise, background, enthusiasm, if you will, into this update of the comprehensive plan. Again, extremely valuable input. Much of the comprehensive plan that existed similarly went through a lot of public input and involvement. And so it was good to bring it back together with everybody's help. So again, we appreciate that, those citizen members and stakeholders. And likewise, I'd like to extend a thank you to the folks who work for within Frederick County and participated, especially on the public facilities components. The comprehensive plan itself is made up of three kind of distinct areas. The first part, which is the introduction, is relatively simple and straightforward. What is the purpose of the plan? What are the core values that the plan tries to capture? And how do we go about implementing the comprehensive plan? That's the introductory section. And to know that the core values and much of that information is based upon work that the Board of Supervisors did at the conclusion of last year, where they created their own vision statement and adopted a set of core values to guide the growth of Frederick County. So that was, again, the basis for a lot of the work that was done with this comprehensive plan. The vast majority, and what we'll be discussing here this evening, is the plan itself, what was previously the different chapters of the plan. So we'll just term that the plan, and I'll come back to that later. And finally, the final section is two appendices. The first one, which is the community area plans. And for those who have participated in planning in Frederick County for a while, you'll know and recognize that those are the area plans that we go into certain parts of the community in detail, look at the future of those areas of the community. I'll touch on that a little bit more because those have been updated in how they are presented. No new information, if you will, has been created with those plans, but we have a new way of approaching those community area plans in the planning effort. And of course, every comprehensive plan is based upon background analysis and supporting studies, a variety of which were used throughout the creation of this land use plan. So to the plan itself, and again, this is where everybody's help and involvement has been extremely beneficial. The plan itself is broken down into eight areas, 8 chapters, if you will. The first one being urban areas, the second one being the rural areas, third covering residential development within the community, the fourth being one that covers business development. And as you'll notice that the business development section has been broken down further, and we've had working groups working on office and industrial, retail business development, tourism, and agribusiness. So 4 distinct yet completely connected components there of a business development plan for the county. The 5th section is transportation, and we'll have the opportunity to hear about an update to the county's Eastern Road Plan as we talk about transportation. The 6th element is public facilities. We have representatives here, if you will, of Frederick County Public Schools, Parks and Recreation, the Regional Library System, and Fire and Rescue Services here to go over some new direction, if you will, with community facilities, public facilities. And the last 2 sections revolve around natural resources for the community and historical resources. So with that in mind, that is the breakdown, if you will, of the plan itself, and those are the chapters, the areas in which many of the citizen working groups provided the input that we so appreciate. To create consistency and simplicity within the comprehensive plan, we looked at each of those chapters and came up with a consistent way of presenting the information. So this outlines how we put each chapter together and had the working groups work on their identifying the current conditions, the current environment, if you will, for each of those chapters, and then what is the future focus for this particular area? What are the community benefits? And what policies and implementation steps should we promote to actually get to where our future focus should be? Each of the groups also identified community partners and stakeholders, many of which participated to some degree in the chapter work. And each chapter will ultimately have some supporting materials and resources to complement of the comprehensive plan, many of which will be individual department or individual groups' own comprehensive plans or master plans. So again, that is the chapter outline that was used for consistency and simplification, and hopefully to create a clearer message as to what was anticipated with the future of Frederick County. Building from that chapter outline, I wanted to highlight two things, and I think that'll be the focus of our ongoing discussion here this evening with the individual working group folks. And that is, of course, the future focus. What is the future focus for each particular chapter? And what policies, implementation steps, changes, if you will, are being proposed from the 2007 Comprehensive Plan. So those are the two things that we're going to focus on here for a little bit. But again, to recognize that the working group efforts were based upon Board of Supervisors' vision statement. That is on your screen to your left. That's ensuring that the quality of life for all Frederick County citizens by preserving the past and planning for the future through sound fiscal management is the county's Board of Supervisors' vision statement. And selected core values deal with long-range planning that protects our rural heritage and directs our future growth through planned infrastructure, expanding commercial and industrial tax base in order to ensure a viable and thriving economy, a government that looks to the future and implements plans to ensure that the quality of life for future generations is preserved. I thought it was important to key back in on that, and that's the guiding principles, if you will, that the Board of Supervisors came up with and helped guide the effort to put this comprehensive plan update together. Now with that, we'll go back to our chapter outline, and this is where, if you'll bear with me here, I'm going to break it down here a little bit and approach each individual working group and give you guys the opportunity to, as I mentioned, identify some of the changes that have occurred since the 2007 Comprehensive Plan and where you believe the future will be in some of the key policies and implementation. So as I do this, we'll just pick up the microphone and hopefully recognize that it's working okay. Yeah. And customarily we'd start with our urban areas, but I believe we're going to skip that presently and jump to our rural area discussion. So I see some working group folks who are representing the rural areas here. It'll be Diane or Johnny Marker. I'm not sure if take a moment or two here to get to the microphone.
What do you want me to do? Really, what do you want me to sort of go through?
Yeah, so I appreciate this. No, just to what we were looking at, if you have identified through the working group's efforts any changes, any key policies that you may have, or any guidances to the future focus through the rural area section.
Give you the 2 cents.
And please feel free. This microphone is certainly in the way here this evening, but I think it would be, we're very comfortable here tonight.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I probably don't even need the microphone if you can hear me.
I think you will for the...
All right. Well, let's see. I would say that the things, I don't think we looked at it so much as what the differences were between the way it was written now and the way we're hoping it would be, other than the fact that I think it's going to be much more concise and easy to read and understand what we're trying to say. But I think our working group, and Johnny, please help me if you think I don't get this on, hit the nail on the head on this one, was that we felt, first of all, that the rural areas things was closely tied with agribusiness, and it was sort of difficult to separate the two in a sense, because obviously, what are the rural lands used for? Agribusiness is one of the major components of that. I think we felt pretty strongly that agriculture was going to continue to be viable, economically viable in our area, but you can't really define exactly where that's going to go. So part of the concern with the rural areas is making sure that in the future, folks who chose to be in agribusiness would have the resources and the land available to them to do wherever that might be. So we felt like the county needed to make sure that there were space open and not being encumbered by other things which might impede wherever that may go, because we felt like that was agribusiness is a huge economic factor in our community. And then second of all, like for the okay. I had to really think about this. And then, so basically, in addition to agribusiness, on the big picture, you want to make sure that you have lands available for whatever might happen in the future. We felt it was unfair for future generations not to have basically an inventory of something. You're not sure where it's going to go. So that basically means maintaining open space in some way, shape, or form. And some of the things that are different than what was in the last rewrite of the comp plan is we have things like some more tools in the toolbox now. So we wanted to make sure that we preserve the ones that we had before and that we're able to use the new ones. And one of the ones, which is our conservation easement authority, the county has enabled that. We've been utilizing that, but that wasn't even mentioned in the old comp plan. So that's, just a very small piece of the thing. So we basically focused on outlining things that we felt like were ways of utilizing what we already had that would maintain open space and adding a few new tools and just focusing on an inventory for the future. John, have I missed anything?
Perfect, Diane. Thank you very, very much. So while we're talking about the rural areas, I'm going to jump in and cover myself the urban areas because in an effort to support the rural areas of the community, obviously the county historically has created urban development area boundaries. And that urban development area is something that has been picked up elsewhere in the state and certainly is required right now for communities to create urban development areas. Frederick County has been involved with that for quite a while. And on the urban area policy side of things, again, the focus for the future concentrates the urban development within those urban development areas where appropriate infrastructure, community facilities, and community can be built to accommodate the anticipated future growth of the community. So the urban areas discussion continues to reinforce our urban development area and sewer and water service area. It encourages a mix of residential, commercial, industrial land uses, and again, consistent with the state code, promotes many of the principles of new urbanism, which seeks to tie those things together in an effective, efficient, and sustainable way. So to highlight again a couple of the policies of the urban area group, to focus growth within the urban areas, to promote new urbanism and traditional neighborhood design principles within the urban areas, to continue to develop the urban center and neighborhood village concepts that the county had created in recent years and use those as strategic growth areas to accommodate potentially transfer of development rights, additional densities such as needs to be accommodated consistent with the state code. The urban areas also bridges the gap a little bit between the transportation section and encourages providing multimodal transportation opportunities within the urban areas for the citizens that will be living there, and to obtain a balanced ratio of residential to commercial and industrial land uses within the urban area. I'll touch on that a little bit more with the business development, but ensuring that there is an appropriate balance between the residential growth in the community and the business development growth in the community is an important component of the county's urban areas. So I'm going to move right now from urban area and rural area over to the residential development, which has a little bit of a foot in both of those doors. Mr. Chris Moan.
Thanks, Mike. Feel like a talk show host. I like this. Or maybe I should sing Christmas carols. That's an idea. With the residential development section, it's a little bit unique. It's different from the current comp plan in the sense that we don't have a section dedicated to residential development. So this is a new section with the update. So we had to kind of create it from scratch a little bit, in terms of how this was going to take shape. But ultimately, we didn't introduce anything exactly new or earth-shattering. It's really more of a reaffirmation of what the policies and practices have been relative to residential development over the last several years and through really been embodied in the comp plan for kind of several iterations. To kind of run through where we came down with policies. Of course, that new residential development would be focused within the urban development area, and that's a continuation of an established policy for us. That's where the services, that's where the infrastructure are located, and that's where the efficiencies can be obtained in terms of having folks live there and continue to develop and grow in those areas. A key thing with the UDA was really keeping an eye on what's happening in the UDA, ensuring that there is a 10-year inventory of housing, of lots to enable, a thriving and dynamic housing market. But we also really emphasize the need to understand what's going on in the UDA much better probably than we have in the past. We've always had an idea of available lots and some of the activity in terms of lot creation and permits. But we really haven't known probably quite as much about what's really going on under the surface. So we want to get a better sense, a more nuanced picture of residential activity in the UDA moving forward. That's something that's one of the implementation steps that we recommended. Also, a key thing is to integrate the green infrastructure and open spaces into new residential development, in particular emphasizing usable open space and integrating usable open space into new residential developments. That's really kind of the prime amenity for new communities and new neighborhoods as they grow. So to pay more attention to that as we go forward. And also really working hard to ensure that there's housing choice and that there's innovation. There are opportunities for folks to rent and to own and to have a various formats and settings wherein they can live and enjoy the community. And really focusing, too, on affordability and recognizing that in many cases what we do as a community, what our regulations and policies speak to, have an impact on affordability. And so we always need to evaluate the things that we're doing to try to ensure that we're not inadvertently driving up the cost of development or the cost of housing. Again, just to ensure that we maximize choice and opportunity. But that's it as a summary.
Thank you, Chris. And the balance in the residential side of things is the business development component. And I mentioned before that was broken into 4 distinct yet connected groups: office and industrial, retail development, tourism, and agribusiness. So we'll hear very briefly about each of those, but to first and foremost point out that the county has always been in the economic development business, so to speak, and prides itself on welcoming new companies into the community and working with existing businesses. So it was very important to make sure that was reiterated and reinforced in the comprehensive plan. We also made every effort to ensure that balance was there between the residential and the business development in terms of both taxable value and land area available for future commercial and industrial opportunities, to ensure that the appropriate quality of life was there for the residents and citizens of Frederick County, and also plenty of business opportunity for folks in the business development community. So I'm going to briefly hand the microphone over, I think, to Brian to talk a couple of points about office and industrial business development. Brian or Josh? I think we're arguing here. Okay.
No, we're not arguing. So our working group followed the chapter outline. We looked at the current conditions and tried to determine, based on these conditions, where do we think the county's going and where do we think that it should be going as far as office and industrial. And the current conditions led us to see that food processing and distribution were the large sort of industrial users in the county. And moving forward, did we want to continue to focus on that path? And that led us to say, we really think that a policy or implementation path needs to be trying to proactively attract desired business entities to this area that utilize a low number of resources, provide a high tax return, and generate high-paying jobs. But we still have to support the realization that food processing and distribution are going to be attracted to this area based on the nature that they can't be outsourced internationally, based on the general location of the county and the proximity to transportation, trying to put all that together so that the general idea was trying to proactively attract the correct types of businesses to this area that would be best for the community growth and allow the community to move forward. I'm not sure what else you want, Mike.
That's perfect, Brian. Thank you. On the retail development side of things, I think the folks that provided input on that was an excellent look at retail development that the comprehensive plan hasn't really looked into in great detail in the past. So we appreciate that. And just to point out that it was recognized that Frederick County really needs to work on promoting itself a little bit more as a dynamic, vital market within the region, a little bit more so than it has done in the past. Take advantage more of the regional opportunities in comparison with adjacent localities and adjacent regions, and do a better job with that, while at the same time recognizing the smaller retail and existing retail opportunities that exist, not just in Frederick County, that could exist in the future in Frederick County, but also recognizing the city of Winchester's role in that component too. So I wanted to point that out with regards to retail development. Another key element of the retail development group's effort focused around quality of the infrastructure and facilities for retail development to ensure that there was a high quality of future developments and certainly upkeep in existing retail developments to ensure that, one, it was a good place to go visit and shop, but also that the property values and the ultimate taxable values of those locations were beneficial to Frederick County. So having covered the office and industrial and the retail side of things, we'll move a little bit more onto the tourism part of it, which again ties directly with other components of the comprehensive plan, not least of which is the rural areas. And Beth is here, so I'm hoping that Beth will say a couple of words about tourism.
I'm really glad that I happened to show up tonight. I'm the only one from my working group. Had no idea I was going to speak tonight, so bear with me. We worked really hard at looking at how to maximize tourism, the sector of tourism that benefits the economic development aspects the most, and that is the heritage traveler. They spend more, they stay longer, they're going to be a better driver in terms of bringing economic revenue to the county. And the nice thing is that the county is well positioned to take advantage of that traveler. The county has a lot of authentic resources that heritage travelers are looking to experience. So the county is very well positioned to do that. And so our recommendations focused on maintaining those things and maximizing those things that make the county a great place to visit and, frankly, to live as well. So focusing on, I was struck, frankly, by the similarities between our recommendations and a lot of the other working groups that look at maintaining the historic character, the agricultural character, the rural character of the county, new urbanism, those kinds of things that maintain that wonderful character, that historic character of Frederick County. So we included a lot of those same kinds of recommendations. We also looked at maximizing the opportunity presented by Cedar Creek and Belle Grove National Historical Park. That's a really great opportunity for the county, and so how can we maximize that as well? So those are some things we looked at as well. So, and supporting the Convention and Visitors Bureau to bring those visitors here. So those are our recommendations.
Thank you, Beth. And the last component, I think I'm going to John on, and that is agribusiness.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to see that this was an added part of the business development, was agribusiness, which, you know, we think is a pretty vital part of it and part of the whole structure. But Diane's group and mine worked together on part of this, and agriculture is going to remain here in the county. It may not look exactly like it does today in the next 20 years. Yeah, there'll still be apple trees. There'll still be, you know, row crops, but there'll be a lot of more intensive agriculture and on lesser acreage, trying for some higher income crops, so that the farmer can increase his net income. And a lot of related companies or businesses will probably come up from this. I mean, a lot of these farmers now, a lot of us are diversifying into other things, agritourism, which goes along with the tourism part, but also, you know, there's trail rides, there's biofuel, you know, renderings. All of this is part of agribusiness, and it's going to keep growing in this area. And we think that there's opportunities here, and that the county, we want them to recognize this. And also, one of the big things that the county has done that is going to help, I think, is the TDRs and PDRs. They will help agribusiness. I just want to congratulate them on the foresight to do this.
Thank you, John. The next chapter of the comprehensive plan update is transportation, and transportation has always been at the forefront of the county's planning efforts. And to just highlight the work that the transportation group has done in conjunction with the transportation committee is Mr. John Bishop.
Thanks, Mike. Well, as we came to the transportation section, I had a lot of things that I thought I wanted to do. I had some things I thought we should do. But then as we got into it, I had to remind myself it's not that much about what John Bishop thinks. And so we moved on from that. And the first step that Chuck and Phil and I took was, George and Phil and I took, was to have a series of stakeholder meetings. That in itself was a challenge to get that boiled down because, as anybody knows, pretty much everybody in the county with a driver's license is a transportation expert. So most people have a lot to say. That's at least my joke around the department anyway. But what we did do is we met with law enforcement, fire and rescue, schools division, Shenandoah University, economic development, Top of Virginia Chamber, Top of Virginia Builders, just pretty much just about every group that we could think of. And the key question that was asked, we had open discussions, it wasn't a survey or that sort of thing. The key question that was asked was, what do you need to happen with transportation in Frederick County to help you accomplish each of your individual missions in a better way? And of course, given the diversity of those groups, we got a significant diversity of answers. And we had a lot of good conversations, and we had a lot of people that were really happy that we came out and met with them and asked their opinion and everything. So that was a very successful process. And now today, pretty much every policy that is in the transportation section came from those stakeholder meetings. Now moving on specifically to the transportation map itself, and we've got copies in the back and that everybody can look at later. We brought in a lot of what has been done since the last update in 2007. So Northeast Land Use Plan, Triangle 277 Plan, Governor's Hill rezoning, Silver Lake rezoning, a lot of these big land use actions that had taken place since our last update. So that was brought in, map was updated, and we moved on from there. And as all this was going on and the drafts were going through, we were taking it through the Transportation Committee as well. And one of the big new terms, I'll call it, that came out of this process was complete streets. We want a complete streets policy. And I get to transportation and they said, well, what's a complete streets policy? You need to define this a little better if you expect us to adopt it into a comprehensive plan. And I'm still working on getting it worded correctly in the draft, but probably the simplest way I can explain what a complete streets policy means is to give a term to, frankly, what we've already been trying to accomplish, considering all users of transportation as you plan your system. So whether that be transit, whether that be bicycle and pedestrians, whether that be retired folks, across the gamut, kids trying to get to school. As you see, as many of you know, we have our first walkable school in the county in Greenwood Mills over there off of Channing Drive. These are the type of things that we were thinking about when we talk about complete streets. It's basically giving what we've been already trying to accomplish a name. Now, it's not a new name, it's not a name we brought up. There's been a national movement toward complete streets. VDOT has a policy that is, in essence, a complete streets policy as well. And all it really means is that as we plan our transportation, we're going to consider all of these things. It doesn't mean we have a set diagram for what every roadway is going to look like. It just means we're going to consider all these things. So that's where we are. That's the big developments, if you will. As you read through those policies and have questions, of course, I'll be available to answer them. Phil and George as well. Not really too much that's ground shaking in there. It was the plan was essentially written by the stakeholders. So with that.
Perfect. Thank you. Moving on from transportation, the next chapter that we will cover this evening is public facilities. And similar to business development, public facilities is made up of several different folks. And we won't go into too much detail with that here this evening. They're here with us and you'll be able to talk with them one-on-one. But I think it's very important to recognize that public facilities, community facilities, were promoted as being focal points to the growing areas of the community, should I say the urban areas and the rural areas, but predominantly in the urban areas of the community. So an effort was made to ensure that Again, the public facilities that are being provided serve as focal points to the community, whether it's the rural areas or urban areas. The policies also promote the different public service providers working together to hopefully meet the needs of the citizens of the county and the rural areas, and certainly within the urban areas. And I think in many cases, the policies of the Community Facilities Chapter, Public Facilities Chapter, fitted in very nicely with the policies of urban development area boundaries and new urbanism, ensuring that we had these facilities in the right places and that they were done with a variety of users in mind. Following from that access was certainly a key consideration with that, to make sure that they were very accessible or would be accessible in the future. Again, the connection there is with Mr. Bishop and the transportation section group. Moving on from public facilities, with the last two chapters are natural resources and historic resources. Two things to be considered with everything that occurs here in Frederick County. And so for natural resources, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Whitwagner for a little overview of the natural resources chapter.
Thank you, Mike. But before we even put pen to paper, we called in an expert group of people from all over the country to try to gain as much knowledge as we could. We brought USGS in, people from DEQ, Virginia Tech, UVA, NC State, specialists on karst topography, and our group learned a lot just from listening to those people. And I thought I'd share some of the things that I didn't even realize, and we wove into the natural resources section. And that is that Frederick County is one of the few counties in the state of Virginia that's at the top of the watershed. In other words, there are no rivers or waterways that flow through Frederick County, which means that all the water that we get comes from the sky in the form of obviously rain, snow, sleet, hail, or however it comes down. And the other interesting thing is that 90% of the recharge that occurs of the groundwater occurs in the karst topography area, which is a very small 5-mile strip of land that's generally west of 81. It falls a little bit on the east side as you go north, but generally it's a 5-mile stretch of land that follows 81 that's 90% of the recharge of the water for Frederick County. There are three basic geologies that occur. The Martinsburg Shale is to the east, and that is almost total runoff in terms of water. It's not nearly as good farm ground, agricultural ground. The next geology is the karst topography, which is as John will say, is the best for farming. It's also the best for water recharge. And then there's the about 50% of the county is the valley and ridge formations, which is all the way to the west, and that's a combination of limestone, sandstone, and shale, and that has a tremendous amount of runoff also, but almost no recharge. So the karst topography is the key to the water resource sustainability of this county. So we feel as if the TDRs and the PBRs are a perfect method of preserving some of that ground for the next 20, 100, 200, 300 years. We're not saying we shouldn't develop karst topography ground, limestone ground. We're just saying that we're going to have to develop new and innovative ways to be able to recharge that groundwater if we're going to develop those areas. Right now, we take almost the opposite approach. We take the stormwater management pond and we put plastic liner under it so that no water is recharged. And it doesn't seem to make sense to me, but there is logic behind it, and that's because anytime you mess with karst topography limestone, you're going to probably create sinkholes, or there's a chance you're going to create sinkholes, and we don't want the pollution that's generated from the industrial or commercial or whatever it is to go down into the sinkholes to pollute the groundwater. We're encouraging low-impact design, and there's several engineers in the group here that can speak a lot better than I can, maybe at one of the work sessions. But low-impact design in the karst, particularly in the karst topography. I don't want to get political, but it also became very evident to the group fairly quickly that we absolutely should consolidate the water sources of Winchester and Frederick County. There is absolutely no reason they should not be consolidated for a number of reasons. First of all, the Shenandoah River provides a tremendous water source, and we should be pulling the majority of our water during the high flows and mid flows and good flows, but not the low flows or critical low flows. Then it should be pulled from the quarries and things like that. And it's a redundancy that this whole region needs for it to be sustained over the next 100 years, for that matter. The rest of the information, I think, in natural resources is pretty well self-explanatory. So I think if you were to read it, I don't think I need to go into any more explanation.
Thank you very much, Whit. And the final, excuse me, the final component of the plan deals with historic resources, and to point out that this was actually the first chapter that was done well over a year ago, if not 2 years ago. And this provided us with the framework and the format, if you will, that the rest of the comprehensive plan was then created upon. So with that, Ms. Rhoda Kriz, if you could take a few moments to...
Be glad to. Thank you. I'm Rhoda Kriz and chairman of the Historic Resource Advisory Board. This has been an amazing project, and it was quite interesting and really quite an honor to be the first section to be written. And when you think about the format of this, it's concise, it's direct, there's not excess verbiage. Anyone who picks up the comprehensive plan is going to know what to expect from each chapter. It's going to be very easy to follow and to see the vision that the county has for these next 20 or 30 years. I think the document will be used, of course, by developers, residential developers, business developers, but I think it could be used in the schools, too. I think it would be wonderful for our students who we hope will be living here in 20 or 30 years to see what the vision of the county is. And I think people who are just moving into the area would certainly benefit from looking at the comprehensive plan. They're used to doing business different ways wherever they're living now, and particularly the people who retire here. I think they would benefit a lot from seeing this document. Now, as far as the historic resource, this is a new chapter. Back in the late 1980s, our board, and I can say our because I was part of the Board of Supervisors at that time, recognized the value of our historic resources, whether they be structures, battlefields, landscapes. And we started a process of having an inventory of those resources. And as the years went by, the Historic Resource Advisory Board was appointed, and they have been able to help address and identify historic places as they relate to proposed development and land use. The policies that we've developed for the comprehensive plan include further identification, because every year that goes by, something becomes a little bit more historic, and continue that inventory, and to complement the economic and residential development by preserving or protecting as many of the historic sites as we can. We realize they can't all be saved. If a place cannot be saved, it's good to document it, have photographs, write something about the history. Some of the new developments have incorporated building materials from the structures that had to be taken down as part of their landscape. So everyone is beginning to recognize the value of preserving these historic sites. We also hope to work toward developing a volunteer program of rural historic districts, and that kind of goes along with the community area plans. And then, as Beth talked about, the heritage tourism. The historic resources fit in very well with trying to show the traveler what we have here in historic resources. And I'd just like to say the Historic Resource Advisory Board is a very dedicated board. We look at everything as to how it will look 20, 30, 100 years from now. And I'm very pleased that a couple of members of the board are here tonight, too. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Rhoda. And again, I think from June and I, we can't thank the members of the working groups enough for all of the effort, thought that went into crafting these updates to the comprehensive plan. It's really appreciated. So that's the plan as drafted currently. It's out on the website. It's available for input. There are many folks, as you've seen tonight, who are able to answer a lot of questions about it, and we'll be around for the rest of the evening to work one-on-one with anybody who may be interested in providing some more input, asking questions about what is in place and what is being proposed. I want to point out also that as part of the implementation, I mentioned the county's community area plans, going into certain parts of the community and looking in more depth and detail about the future of those particular areas. Rhoda had mentioned the potential for doing that in the rural communities in the future, and that's somewhere where we certainly want to go. I'll point out that the first appendix to the comprehensive plan is a compilation of all of the community area plans that the county's done to date. And over on our back wall over here, this effort has encouraged us, if you will, to update all of the community area plan maps, whether it's from the Northeast Land Use Plan down to Route 277, Round Hill Land Use Plan, all the way to the West Jubilee Land Use Plan. So in recent years, the county has made an effort to improve those plans, and hopefully we'll see as part of this effort a consistent way of presenting all of that information. Again, much of the information that's contained within is exactly the same. They've been updated to reflect the transportation section update of the Eastern Road Plan. So hopefully here this evening you'll be able to take a moment or two to look at those community area plan updates, which will be part of this comprehensive plan update. And I think that's also a plug for our future community area plans and those planning efforts that will hopefully involve other members of the community, more localized perhaps, and will be the first opportunities that we have then to ultimately implement these policies that have been discussed within the chapters of the land use plan. Again, I'm Mike Ruddy, Deputy Director of Planning, and June Wilmot is here with us this evening, and I'm going to leave this information up there on the website and also on the screen here this evening. So we'd encourage everybody to contact us in one way or another. The information is available on the county's website, and you can contact June or I directly. And again, we'll be here for the rest of the evening to work individually with anybody who has additional input to provide and would like additional information and clarification on the work of the working groups. Following this evening's meeting, I think it's important to point out that we hope to take all of the input that we receive over this evening and over the next couple of weeks, finalize the comprehensive plan update into one document that we can then sit down with the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors at our retreat, which happens at the beginning of February each year, and then move forward from that through the public hearing process. So again, we encourage everybody to participate with reviewing and providing additional input. But hopefully we'll be drawing it to conclusion here at the beginning of next year. June, do you have anything to conclude with?
Gosh. My feeling today was one of joy. And I will share with you that it's been a distinct pleasure to work with each of you. As I said, we decided to do this ourselves because we could speak Frederick better than anybody else. And you all have done it, and we thank you very much. Do encourage you to, again, stop at the tables. That's where paper copies of each of the sections are. Do encourage you to get on the website, particularly those folks who are at home who would like to comment on it, and for those in the audience who would like to see something specific. But the only thing I can do, and I must do it,
So what we'll do right now is if I can basically ask the working group folks, whether it's urban, rural, all the way through, if you take a few minutes now to head back to the tables where the information is, and just in the order of the plan, if you will, we start with urban areas, rural, business development, transportation, public facilities, natural resources, and historic resources. If you could head in that direction and then make yourselves available for any additional input. And of course, as June said, goodies, Christmas cookies, I hope. Thank you all.